Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first ever Solitary Confinement Sports Network episode. I am your host, the Finkster, and today we will be going over the Lockdown Football Sim League Wildcard Playoff Matchup. Results. Recap. Are you ready? Because I am ready to get into this. And if you're wondering, yes, this is a Christmas tie. Let us begin. We will start with the Northeast Division matchups. The Beats from Brooklyn took on the Bills of Buffalo, both New York teams. The Beats beat the Bills 49-20. The Beats had 158 yards rushing with 344 yards passing. They did not turn the ball over either, which is very great for them. They converted 2 fourth-down conversions and had a 60% red zone percentage scoring. The Beats did relatively well. O'Shaw Hennessy was named Player of the Week. He threw for over 334 yards, 3 TDs, and kept a clean game with no interceptions, yes. He also had 41 rushing yards. That is what the Beats will need this week in the divisional matchup. At the press conference, head coach Brecklin Long of the Beats had this to say.
It came down to execution today. We had a couple players step up when we needed it, and it got us a win.
The next team in the Northeast Division are the Chicago Blues, and they played the Pittsburgh Steelers. They had to go on the road, and they won 31-7. They ran for 119 yards and threw for 217. They had 1 turnover, but they also caused 4 turnovers, so they did well in that department. They were 57% in the red zone. Pretty impressive. Just a few under the Beats. While Kiki O'Keefe, quarterback, was named Player of the Week with 7 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 1 interception, and 2 forced fumbles. He had a great game. Great game! It is good news for the Blues that David Bailey will be back in the starting lineup at running back. That is really great news. Head coach John Zimmerman had this to say after the game.
You know, with a 31-7 win, you gotta love that. Forced 4 turnovers on defense. Great effort there. We're glad that Bailey will be back with us, but you can guarantee Gouge is gonna get some reps as well.
Let's move on to the Southwest Division, there's my notes. My assistant didn't put my notes in order. The Austin Armadillos had to take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the Armadillos went in there and won with a score of 38-21. They ran for 223 yards and threw for 208. So a pretty balanced offense. They did have 1 turnover, but were 60% in the red zone. That's about where we're seeing all these teams. It's playoffs. You gotta score in the red zone. As we look here, the news, the shocking news, Torres was back in at quarterback with Woodrow struggling over the past few weeks, and he won Player of the Week for that division. He threw for 208 yards. He had 2 touchdowns and 1 pick, but he also ran for 27 yards and a touchdown. So that is something you really like to see if you're an Armadillos fan. In other news, team captain Robert Vega showed back up. He was back in for this game, and did he put on a showing on just 12 carries? He had 139 yards and a touchdown. He had a 71-yard run alone. Amazing stuff. Now, we'll hear from Wade Liu on how he felt about his team's performance.
It was a good win, and that's all I really have to say.
Riveting stuff from that old Wade Liu. Now, on to our last one. The Salt Lake City Elks. Barely squeaking in over the Sacramento Miners to get into the playoffs, are probably the biggest underdog. And they had to go into the coldness of the Chicago Bears, where they won 22-14. Yes, the Elks beat the Bears 22-14. They had 162 rushing and 291 passing. So if you are following me, that means Landon Moon, the backup, has now won 2 games. Crucial games. Impressive stuff. They had 1 turnover and were only 40% in the red zone. That is worrisome if you're an Elks fan. Hopefully they can get it corrected by this divisional game. Player of the Week. Xavier Ibarra. Yes, Xavier Ibarra. Good for you, young man. Xavier Ibarra's really come on in the absence of Oliver Wagner, who's one of the main key components to that defense. He had 2 tackles for loss, 4 tackles total, and a safety. Oh, I love safeties. Gotta love it when you get a safety. And very good news for the Elks fans. The older brother, Oliver Wagner, will be back for the divisional game. That is good news for the Elks. Bad news for whoever stands in his way, because he is a man on a mission. Head coach Gregory Charles had this to say in the press conference.
Well, we've just got to take it one game at a time, and, can't get ahead of ourselves, because if we get ahead of ourselves, we may get in some trouble, and if we find ourselves in some trouble, well, then we'll really be in trouble. We don't want that.
That is your weekly recap here. So now on to what's coming up this week. Starting tomorrow, Saturday, May 30th, the NFC Division Round kicks off at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, when the Salt Lake City Elks travel to New York to take on the Giants, number 6 seed against number 1. That should be great fun. Following that one, at 7 p.m., AFC Divisional Round, number 6 Brooklyn Beats take on Memphis Steamers. Following that, Sunday, at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the AFC Divisional Round, number 5 Chicago Blues will take on the number 2 Jacksonville Jaguars. Following that game at 7 p.m., the NFC wraps up with number 5 Austin Armadillos taking on number 1 OKC Bisons. The Bisons put it to them in Week 17. We shall see what happens when the game really matters. And that will wrap up the very first episode of Solitary Confinement Sports Network. I am the Finkster. I thank you for watching. So long.